Check, check.
Check, check.
Okay.
My phone is checking. Like a camera ready and I'll show up at the very top.
Okay.
Get everybody's mics on, please, before we start.
Okay. Wow. A lot of people here. Good to see. Good to see. We will call this meeting to order and we will start as usual with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll join me. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now it's time for roll call. I don't believe any of our committee members are attending by Zoom, so we can do this verbally and by acclamation. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, good, good, good. So roll call, Flint Nelson, Chair, here. Bill Stewart, Vice Chair.
Here.
Peter Hensley,
Here.
Patty Townsend Smith.
Here.
Okay, and Chad, our alternate, is here. But Chad, as we get to the next item on the agenda, seating of alternates, we have a full group. And so Chad, we are glad you're staying, but we will not be seating you as a member for today, okay? All right. Additions, deletions, I'm gonna get there. Additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda, as always, we'll start with the staff.
Staff has none.
Staff has none. Do any members have an addition or deletion to the agenda? Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Pete moves and Bill seconds a motion to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The agenda is approved. Public comment. I'm going to interject here that Patty informs me that someone has come to attend our meeting with a interest in possibly becoming a member of this committee, and she wanted an opportunity to introduce that person and to give them an opportunity to say hello, right, Patty?
Yes.
So Patty, would you do that?
Hi, Carol is a friend of mine and she's recently sold her business and has a business in finance. I think she'd be a great addition to our committee. Carol, I don't know, do you want to introduce yourself?
There you go.
Carol Wilson, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for allowing me. So yes, I have many years of experience in finance, blah, blah. So there you go. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Short and sweet.
Exactly. Wilson.
So Carol, thank you very much and blah, blah. No, really, what I wanted to say is that the normal process for this, just so you understand how we go about it, is we love it when members of the public express an interest, ratepayers express an interest in joining the committee. We have room on the committee for additional members, so it's not like we're full. And the normal process is for you to attend 2 or 3 of our meetings, get a sense of what we do. And if you believe after doing that, that this is something you would be willing to make a commitment to, then you let us know and we will have a discussion and a vote, recommend that the board appoint you to the committee. We cannot appoint a person. We can only recommend to the board, to the full board. And we would enjoy doing that if you are so inclined. Meanwhile, as a person who is attending and thinking about joining, if at any point in our discussion of today's agenda or at a subsequent meeting, if there is something that you would like to contribute or if there is something that you would like to question, you would be welcome to do so. We have a little slip. You can fill out a slip, make a comment. If you have some generalized comments after one or more meetings that you would like to make about things in general, we would welcome to hear from you. Okay. So, but that, if you have any questions about kind of how we would go about this, you're welcome to ask. Okay, and please call me Flint. Okay, all right. So now we will move to public comment, item number 7. We do have some people who have expressed a desire to speak on item number 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this blurb here I have. Any person may address the committee at this time upon any subject not identified on this agenda, but within the jurisdiction of Rainbow Municipal Water District. However, any matter that requires action will be referred to staff for a report and action at a subsequent meeting. As to matters on the agenda, an opportunity will be given to address the committee when the matter is considered. And in fact, I have 2 people who want to talk on item 7, and I have 1 person who has expressed a desire to speak on another item on the agenda, and we will do that accordingly. Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Only staff.
Huh?
Staff.
Staff only. Okay, so I believe then we can move on to the approval of the minutes.
So we're gonna take the public comment? Is
Yeah.
there public comment on this one?
Oh, gosh, yes, I completely forgot. Yes, thank you, Jake.
They actually get to,
Wacko, Mr. Wacko. Okay. So right now I have Rick Carey and Dwayne. Rick and Dwayne, you're choose among yourselves as to which one goes first.
I'll go.
Okay, thanks, Rick. 3 minutes or less, please.
Where's the clock?
I got a clock right up there.
On the thing.
small.
Ready, go. So last board meeting, the subject came up of pump station number 4 and the $1.7 million proposal for that. I did a little more homework afterwards, and I understand the pump that I was referring to for Silverleaf Lane and Weiss is fully engineered. It's the plans and everything are in the building. It's signature ready. And the problem was getting Oceanside to sign off. And I urged the board to revisit that as the alternative to pump station number 4. It may not be ideal, but I think it frees up a lot of money to do other things like possibly replace the small diameter pipe, the 8-inch pipe that is part of the line between Gopher tank and the Turner tank, which may be a restriction. I understand there's some hydraulic modeling that was done, and the modeling is as good as the testing, but I think there's a viable alternative that'll be a lot cheaper and a lot faster. And I understand pump 4 is only needed. It's a nice to have, it's not a must have. We'll find out this summer for sure, if we get a dry spell. Second thing at the last board meeting was there was questions about benefit and costs and a lot of discussion about imports and building our business based on what happens with the tariffs. And I would say that's not a good way to go about building a business. So I sent to Jake this morning 2 documents prepared by the California Avocado Commission at no small expense that talk about the economic impacts. This was focused on Escondido, but you can easily extrapolate to North County. I'd also like to offer, there were questions about acreages and a lot of things going around, and I'm happy to be the resource for that to connect people with whatever data they want. There's a wealth of data. Thank you for your time.
Rick,
You did.
before you leave, just want to say thank you for sending that information. I received it around 9:30 this morning. I have not had a time to review it, but I will. I appreciate your interest and thank you. Okay.
And the quiz isn't until Friday. And
Okay, that's fine.
it's open book.
I don't quiz well, but we'll see. All right. Dwayne,
It is.
and Dwayne, may I ask, I have seen you here many times. We've conversed many times. And unfortunately, I don't remember how to pronounce your last name. Will you help me with that?
Well, if you're in Scotland, it's pronounced Urquhart. Here, it's just Urquhart.
Oakert. Well, I used to be in Scotland, so I'm good with that. Okay.
Either one will work.
All right.
Use it for dinner reservations, except in Scotland.
Right.
It'll never get put down correctly. Thank you, members. As a second generation farmer and all, and the reason I'm the second is because my dad was obviously the first. And when he was here, he and his fellow farmers and the like were instrumental in actually developing the Rainbow Water District. This water district was financed and built by farmers. And it was built by them because it was intended to support agriculture. And I am concerned, and I've mentioned my concerns at other meetings, about the change in policies that have occurred, in this district in particular, relating to water, cost and the like, that are adversely impacting agriculture. And I wanted to remind the board or the subcommittee that we were directed by the board to come here to specifically address our concerns. And it gives me pause when I look at the agenda and I don't see ag water cost and rates, the things that we, Rick, and now I brought some of the other farmers here, have been talking about for months, specifically on the agenda. So I've split my presentation into two, my introductory comments here, and then I'm going to be talking about cost aspects on item number 12. But quickly, there is some misnomer that was brought up at the board meeting about what is impacting agriculture. And it feels like to me that some members are trying to dispel the notion that water costs aren't having a dramatic impact on our farming by suggesting that imports are the sole reason that agriculture, at least in the avocado aspect, is having issues and the like. That's false. I can tell you again, as a second generation avocado farmer, water now has become the #1 expense on my profit and loss. And I would be grateful for you to join and bring some finance perspective into this equation. Second of all, I've been dealing with imports since 1995. Foreign imports have been allowed into this area since 1995. It isn't just the aspect of imports. It's the amount of volume of import in combination with the exacerbated costs of water that are occurring from this district. And your former CFO documented to everyone here, and it seems, and I'm trying to say this respectfully, to be going in one ear and out the other, that the whole reason, not the whole reason, a large proportion of the reason is the loss in agricultural sales. And perhaps our new CFO here can help the board understand by doing some basic performance projections what the cost of water is when you only are selling 10,000 units or 15,000 units or 20,000 or 25 or 30,000 when the district was selling that much back in the 07 timeframe. And all of that almost exclusively, according to your predecessor, was in the loss of agricultural water sales. So what do we do here? We increase the fixed cost on ag meters. We increase the unit cost on ag so that it makes it even more prohibitive for us to buy and use more water. And what does that do to our farms? It means that we don't grow as large a crop. We don't grow as large a fruit. And that doesn't allow us to have the income and the revenue that we would like to have to support not only our water expenses, but other expenses as well. I will get into that in a little more specificity, but my concern is with this introductory comment, this needs to be taken more seriously, and it's bothering me greatly after the time and I that Rick have spent politely trying to bring this to the board's attention, that the focus isn't showing up on the agenda, because this needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Okay, next on the agenda is item number 8, approval of minutes. Those of you members of the committee, you have had an opportunity to review the minutes that Therese and her crew have put together of our last meeting. Do any of you have any suggested changes or additions or deletions to those minutes?
No, sir.
Okay, if not, then I'm looking for a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, so Pete moves and Patty seconds a motion to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Okay. Comments and requests, and as always, we start with our general manager. Jake?
Yeah, thank you. I have a few things to go over today. Just to give this group kind of schedule of what's coming up
Mhm.
on some of the budget related topics. We are diving into budget season here. You'll see item 12, the water sales projection. That's a key piece of starting to formulate that budget. Obviously, behind the scenes, we're working on all our department budgets and everything in that, and the committee should see that in April. So a couple of key pieces that'll be coming. And then we have a plan for May 6th, which is a joint workshop between the committees and board, similar to what we conducted last year, to really kind of bring all of that together into a comprehensive budget discussion. So those will be going on working feverishly over the next month or so to put all that together. Wanted to give you an update on the crop swap program. The district has over $1 million, $1,043,450 in committed funding to qualified ag projects as part of the program, as part of that grant funded program. That's made up of 85 total projects. 15 of those projects are actually complete and they're already fully reimbursed. So we're really starting to kind of move through some of those. We have 49 others that are already approved and in progress. And there's actually 18 additional projects that are in the approval phase. So probably another, if they're about average, what we've seen per project, about another 300,000 in existing applications that are moving through the process. We've only had 3 projects that were actually denied, that actually submitted an application and weren't approved. There are some program requirements, so obviously we had 3, but 3 out of 85, not very many. So we are also pursuing some additional grant funding. That is in the works. I think I may have mentioned this at or at the board. So we're looking for some additional funding. There is still funding available within the overall program. We've just expended all of our allotment and then some. But if those projects don't get allocated by these other districts that kind of have, first dibs at those funding, probably in the next 4 or 5 months, there'll be a look to any projects that are on the books, and we do have a waiting list currently, I think we'd be making an adjustment and fund those projects. So I think there's a really good chance that even projects that are on the waiting list will get funded. But yeah, you're really starting to see some of these actually pop up and get done. So and we should see a lot more over the next 18 months. The deadline was the end of 26. So that's why we're looking at, kind of mid 25 is if the project's not on the books and ready to roll, then we need to get those projects funded and do it to give them time to actually complete it. So that's rolling along. We do have kind of budget related meeting with ICE's office. They're starting their next round of kind of what they call their community funding, but it's a grant program that's open to special districts, and so we'll be meeting with them and pitching some of our projects that kind of fit the bill for things they like to fund. That's in the next week. We'll be doing that. So hopeful to get some grant funding, help us move some of our CIP forward at no cost.
Jake, question about that?
Yep.
Very quickly. This comes up because of some work I do in another venue. Grant funding, great thing, basically kind of free money. Kind of, but I know that quite often grants come with conditions that must be met. And the grants that we have obtained so far and the grants that we are looking out to get, are we sufficiently aware and I guess not concerned about whatever strings or conditions that that money carries with it?
Yeah, a couple things we need to be careful of, especially this would be coming through the federal government. And so usually the biggest thing that typically brings with it is NEPA compliance. So environmental at the federal level. So it's not impossible to get through the NEPA process, but it is another, it's another hurdle to get through. So what we've done in the past is really try to pick the projects that kind of best fit for those, for that situation that might not give us tremendous trouble in the environmental area. It's easier to implement within their timelines if it's that. But usually we target what they're most likely to fund, projects that we have that match up with their most likely to fund. ICE's office, a lot, they like military, wildfire, mitigation, things like that typically, fit the bill for them. And so, so I think those are kind of things we'll be targeting, some of those types of projects that the story fits that mold. But that's usually the biggest hurdle is the environmental process. The applications can be slow and there's other kind of bureaucracy type of things. But as far as actually getting the projects implemented, it usually comes down to just environmental clearance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going. Yep.
Yeah. So wanted to remind you, Therese sent out if anybody's interested, email about a tour of Diamond Valley Lake that we're going to do on June 20th, something we set up with Met. So that's a few months out, but if you are interested, let Therese know, and we do have that set up and accommodations for, I think probably as many as that want to go. But it should be a really good tour. The lake itself is fantastic, but we'll get to see the dams and the intake and pumping facilities and all that kind of stuff. Should be really interesting.
No swimming, right?
No swimming. They do allow boating and fishing. But no, it's just a tremendous facility. So should be a good tour. I wanted to update you too on there's been a lot of activity surrounding local development. It just seems like it's popped up really since the first of the year, where we've got some pretty heavy activity on some of the local developments. You all know the Havens, which is currently under construction. That's the first 59 units. They're moving forward with all of that. I think they have all the water and sewer facilities in. So now they're just building those houses. So we're consistently getting the meter requests on those. They actually have another about 190 units pending in a phase 2 and 3, kind of behind where the existing where the development's occurring now. And so there's active discussions going on about that too. So
are those 2 phases approved? And
as far as the county goes, yeah, please. I'll let Chad go the details. I don't want to misspeak here.
Phase 1A1 approved. That's the winery and the tasting room. That was accepted by the district's board of directors, I believe, at their February board meeting. Phase 1A, which is 59 lots, approved. Homes in. We're setting meters now. We're working on a punch list. Then they're going into phases 1B, 2, 2B, and so on and so forth. Those are still in their tentative track map stages. Nothing has been approved. The district has not signed off on plans. We don't know road alignments, pipe sizes, anything like that yet. So early phases on those.
And therefore, because they have not yet been approved, any developer contributions to the district have also not yet been determined and or received for those subsequent phases. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the work that we have done already, did it take into account what their expansion plans were?
As far as, well, they're still working on, they're going to have to reroute water lines and do things for this next phase because they're impacting, a big area that's behind that existing development. So as far as I know, coming through their existing development, that's the 12-inch line that we actually did the upgrade to out in Gopher Canyon, but they have a 12-inch line that runs up through their development. That will be the tie that runs to back. So it generally, yes, but the exact alignments, no.
And would it be safe to say that whatever work that they funded and we performed to support 1A would not be would not have to be redone or abandoned or
no.
whatever as a result of them getting bigger and bigger,
No,
right?
it's just gonna be the.
Okay,
on-site stuff.
all right.
So to that point, the district looks at it, when the developer comes to us and their design engineers, they really do want us to look at it very narrowly in a vacuum. Don't consider all the phases. The district looks at it, like you're saying, globally, holistically. How do all of these come together? And so when we meet with operations, when we meet back with the design engineers, that's not the way they want to do it, but that is the way the district is doing it, so that it all goes together as a whole.
Good.
Whether they build it all in 1 year or
Right.
20 years, we look
Right.
at it all.
Okay.
Another development that is moving forward is the Ocean Breeze Ranch. So that's the vessel's property, about 400 units there. And they're going to the Planning Commission, I believe this month for their. Oh, is it?
Been postponed to, I believe, April 18th.
Okay, next month. They're going to the Planning Commission for they have some revisions they made, grading revisions, and they had to analyze the bumblebees and some different things. So, but that seems to have some real life to it, and the potential to kind of move forward. So, I think they indicated they would like to start grading this fall on that project. So, but we'll see. Those things kind of come and go sometimes, but.
And we have not received any developer contributions at this point for that project, have we?
No.
Okay,
No.
so money to come.
Yeah, well, if they move forward, correct, yeah.
Okay.
But again, we've been working with them on the kind of the master plan and what the facilities that they need to build to serve both on the water and the sewer side and all that. So so that's all in the works. Also Citro, they're still building. I think they have 100 units or so left to build, but they're actively still constructing over there. I think we just got another request for 23 meters or so. So the unit counts are increasing. They also have a site that, and this has raised some discussion. I think it was originally zoned for a school site, or yeah, and but they're potentially trying to rezone that for additional housing. So we're still kind of digging into that and finding out the details, but there's, so there's some potential for another, I've heard between 80 and 160 units, like multifamily units or,
Wow,
yeah.
that's a lot for that small amount of land.
Yeah.
Do you know
So,
why the school got disapproved or?
well, no, I don't know the inner workings of that, but I know at some point it was talked about, right? That a potential school site,
Yeah.
is it going to be,
We know of
Yeah.
a site that would be a wonderful site for a potential school site.
Yeah.
um,
Didn't work.
Also Paula Ranch, which is over in the same neck of the woods. They're a little hung up with some transportation drainage issues, but we're in kind of constant dialogue with them on what's happening and trying to keep tabs on timing of that. I don't think they have a good handle on timing because of those issues that they're trying to work through. Also, and this is something I talked to Flynn about before, but there's and I just drove by there this weekend, the pretty large housing development going on off North River Road, which is in the city of Oceanside. Not much to do with us. They're actually building a new sewer, and we've got some relocations and things happening, but not anything we're serving. But along with that, the Part East sold those properties over there. So they sold about 310 acres off of North River Road, right near Highway 76. Used to be big nursery trees, And
These are
so,
Puerto del Sol area, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
and so we're keeping an eye on that too. Obviously, that's that's our sewer service area, water and sewer service area, and so not sure what the plans are there, but something we're kind of keeping an eye on is, if development starts moving down that corridor, obviously
I've seen a little,
has an
I've
impact.
seen a little minimal grading and some staking going on out there, some
Yeah.
white stakes, something's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're keeping an eye on that, but there's quite a bit of activity going on right now. So I just figured guys would be interested in that. Last thing, and I mentioned this at the meeting, we are looking at that CSDA is actually sponsoring some legislation that's related to the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule, which impacts our vehicle purchases. This is the big push to move to heavy duty electric vehicles. And so they're sponsoring legislation that actually it's fairly significant reform of that act that was approved. It seeks to designate some of the district, our type of vehicles as emergency response, similar to how police and fire are exempt. And so not just water districts, but electric utilities or, everybody who's impacted by this. It would be a good change, I think, for us, because it's going to be very difficult to buy 3/4 ton and 1 ton trucks, electric trucks that don't exist. So I'm not saying they won't ever, but they don't yet that I know of. And so it definitely has an impact on, on our vehicle purchases and that. So we're in support of it, and we'll kind of keep you posted on that as we move through. So that's all I got today.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Have you heard anything about Horse Creek Ridge? They were trying to get a rezoning for the properties over there that were supposed to be commercial.
Chad was looking into it. We don't have a lot of information yet.
Because I heard February 8th was the day that they were trying to get their rezoning done, and they would have more information by February 8th.
So that is the area directly east of Palomar College,
Yeah.
kind of up on a hill.
Mhm.
There's 2 sites. It's like Frenzia Road, or I can't remember the exact road.
Fraser, yeah.
Fraser Road
Mhm.
spans the 2 sides. So we looked at the permit signs. They were pulled back in 2021. It says small lot, single residential homes. It was originally zoned as commercial space, and public commenting closed in early February. So as Jake mentioned earlier, we emailed the project manager from the county, but have not heard a response yet.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jake? Okay, we'll move on to 9B, finance managers' comments. And Constantine,
Yes.
we are so glad to have you here. We are glad that you joined the district. I've gotten to talk to you a few times before this, and we're really looking forward to your help and leadership as we move forward. So thank you very much, and your report.
Thank you. As my comment, I just wanted to add, and it's kind of answers public comment, that we're starting cost of water study, rate study, and we'll be bringing it later to the finance committees. That's for everybody
Bring
to
it closer
see,
to
and
you. Pull it. There you go. Thank you, Constantine. We'll be
Yeah.
sure we capture every word of wisdom that you have for us. Okay.
sure. Yeah. That's all from me, and then we'll go over our monthly financials.
What's the schedule for the rate study?
We just provided them because we just finished the audit and they wanted to have all the financial and final numbers and make sure we're not changing them. And they'll also be relying on our budget. So as we start working on the budget and have more information on our budget for 25-26 fiscal year, we'll provide that to them. And then it will be incorporated in the cost of study of the water. So the timeline, we'll be bringing it in probably in a couple months or 3, and we'll see where it'll be a start. Because we're not planning to change rates until
Yeah,
January 1st.
yeah, a little different this year because we decided, and historical practice has been that we do, the rates on July 1st, right? Rates on July 1st, and then any pass through comes through on January 1st. We are not intending to do any rate adjustments on July 1st. So basically holding an 18-month period from last July all the way to January 1. So the idea is we're going to get it to a point where we understand what the revenue requirements and all that are. But then as we move from July to January, that's where we'll really kind of be looking at the rate design and that for implementation on January 1, what the results of that come. So, but we will need to do wastewater. Wastewater will come as part of the budget season. And we will have a handle on the overall for water, but then the actual, like I said, the rate sheet that'll come out of that, we're going to give our cost of service team and this team a little more time. They've got a little more time
Mhm.
before January 1 to kind of put all that together. So that's generally the schedule. But you'll start to see it during the budget season. You'll start to see it in May, April and May.
And we're using the same team that we've used.
IB,
before?
correct. Yeah, it's just an update. It's just an update.
Okay, and committee members, do any of you have any questions for Constantine and his report? No.
No.
Okay, we'll move on to item 9C, committee member comments. It's an opportunity for members of the committee to make any comment they would like to have on a topic that is or is not on the agenda. So, Bill, you got anything?
Nothing new.
Patty?
Well, I was unable to make the last meeting, but I did watch it from home. Aren't we supposed to be bringing to the board that $750,000 study or whatever,
Well,
or where Rick was talking about?
This was the surplus that we generated as a result of early detachment.
right.
And there was a whole conversation we had a couple of committee meetings ago with both engineering and operations and budget and finance. How do we deploy that 750,000?
Right.
And
Well,
my
and I think-
recollection was that the board decided to remand it to reserves.
Well, we
And-
were going to look at it as part of the overall fiscal.
Exactly.
How did we end the fiscal year?
Right.
And then obviously moving forward, it either helps reserves or it helps CIP, however we want to implement that. But I think that was the kind of decision. That's what came out of customer communication and customer service as well was, well, let's, see how we end the year and kind of go from there. But yeah, that was the board's direction on that.
Okay, so the next board meeting, we're going to be talking about. if
We're going to be
this
talking
goes
about
into
the,
budget,
yeah, exactly. The
and
overall
then we'll
budget.
vote on it then?
Well, we'll be voting on the overall budget for the following fiscal year, which,
No, but that's 750.
right. It'll be,
Concerned about. It was budgeted for, but then there's would buy us into like a $1.5 million project. Oh, okay. Maybe I
No,
wasn't
no,
watching.
no. Let's be sure we get clear because it's
Yeah.
important that every member of the committee is clear about what we did and what we are doing, right? I mean,
Well,
it's very-
specifically, Greg Irvine was in favor of that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Vaguely. And
Yeah.
what I remember is that we had a variety of things that we needed to pay for. And we had a variety of potential funding sources, including some loans that we obtained. And the decision was, and at that time, I do not believe that the Gopher Canyon emergency repair was complete.
oh, the pipeline, yeah.
And so we did not know if some of that money would be needed to complete that. There was also the issue of the first payment on detachment. And then we got the loan and we paid ourselves back for that. So
Right.
I think what ended up happening, Patty, is that rather than putting a specific label on a thing that the 750 was going to pay for, that instead it just became part of our overall reserve and cash position. And as time goes by, we would be deciding what we would buy, and that money would be a part of that cash position. I think that's
Yeah, and I think the board's thought was look at it holistically, right? Look at it
Mhm.
holistically from, we're gonna, like I said, we're talking about this a month ago, so we're heading into the budget season right now. And so that we're going to be talking about where we sit today, what our needs are for, we're going to go through this. Well, we went through the CIP at ENO. We're going to go through the CIP, the projected 5-year CIP at the board meeting. And so that's the board's direction was, let's look at it holistically and figure out exactly what we want to do at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, it's part of this budget process.
because at the end of the day, that money does not have a fingerprint on it that identifies, it's just, cash is fungible. And
Well, Mr. Irvine thought that it was already budgeted for. Okay.
It's not.
okay,
He has
Can
a
we assume
question.
that that'll be an issue on May 6th?
It'll be a topic, but again, I think looking at it from a holistic perspective, where do we sit with reserves? Where do we,
cash is cash.
yeah.
We'll have a chance to chat
So-
about it though at that
Right.
meeting.
Right. Plus, we have the workshop. I mean, we have a number of things that are coming up as part of our budget process, Bill, and I'm sure that it'll get looked at as we, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And
Everybody good?
Mhm.
We're good? Okay, all
I
right.
just wanted to add, it's invested right now in our camp fund at 4.55%. So it's earning interest and it's in unrestricted funds and helping to rebuild our reserves.
4.5, huh?
Yes.
All righty. I like that. I like that. Okay, so,
Does Rick have to fill out a form or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, we need to fill out speaker slips.
Conversations. Like. Board meeting that you were absent last one,
Mhm.
where the vote was tabled on number 4. That's kind of separate from.
Wait, she wasn't even talking about that. She's with the
No, I
pipeline.
actually
We're
was
talking about the
talking about
pipeline.
what he's talking about.
The pump station?
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
The seven
okay.
fifty that was
Okay,
supposedly
well,
allocated.
I'm confused now.
750 discussed several months ago.
Mhm.
There was a presentation that gave, I think, 4 possible courses of
Mhm.
action, one of which was return to ratepayer. And then it didn't get discussed for a while. At the last board meeting, this Gopher pump came up where it was only budgeted, I believe, for about 750. And the drawings alone were going to be $250,000. Now it's gone to a $1.7 million
This one.
proposal. And
Okay.
there was discussion. 2 board members said they wanted more information. 1 board member wanted to go forward. So that's my recollection. And I think the
That's
2
true, that-
things are conflated
Yeah.
here. I just wanted to
Yeah,
provide.
same number.
Yeah, and we will bring that back. I apologize. I guess I was confused too. That's as part of the overall CIP discussion, and that's going to happen at the board meeting this
Mhm.
week or
Okay,
this
because
month.
as I was
Yes.
watching from home and
Yeah,
2 of the members were like, at least 2. I know Hoffman wanted more information.
Yeah.
As Michael Mack too, I believe,
Yeah.
and I was in the same category, but I was home.
okay.
More information.
Sorry about that.
No,
I was confused. My fault.
and
Not agendized. Not
Right.
agendized.
not agendized. Yes, it
Not
is.
agendized.
And
Wasn't I under comments?
I did not recollect that what we did at the board meeting regarding the Gopher Canyon pump station was in any
Table.
way related to
No.
$750,000 surplus operating.
Yeah, no, I think we were
Surplus.
2 different things.
talking.
I
Yeah,
think
sorry.
same number,
number,
but different,
but yeah.
different number.
Mhm.
Okay, we're moving on. We're moving on. So item number 10, presentation of award from the Government Finance Officers Association for the fiscal year 24-25 operating and non-operating budget. Little pat on the back here. Is that right? Yep.
This is from the previous administration, and this is Government Finance Officer Award for budget of 24-25. So we received an award, and we're planning to keep receiving them going forward, providing transparency and excellent budgets and that qualify under the GFOA requirements.
Yeah. So basically GFOA is made up of a bunch of finance managers, finance folks
Mhm.
that review all of these public agency budgets and but they review them for that full transparency, all the, different, completeness, those kind of things and issue awards if your budget meets certain, their kind of thresholds that they're looking for. And so I think this is what do we say,
Yes.
the ninth, I think about the
Yeah.
ninth time that
We've gotten it a bunch of times.
yeah, that we've gotten it. So but every year we've got to get the budget done and get it completed and meet those standards. And those standards are always changing. We constantly get, feedback from the GFOA on things you can do better, things you can improve, even as standards change and things like that. So every year it's kind of it forces improvement if you want to continue to get the award and those kind of things. And so it's nice when we continue to strive to get that and it comes through. So this is for the budget, this previous year, the 24-25 fiscal year.
And wanted to add, we just finished annual comprehensive financial report, ACFRE, and also applied for an award with GFOA. And this is for actuals and for the audit of fiscal year
Okay,
23-24.
good,
Yes.
good.
Expecting to receive an award as well for that.
Okay. Thank you. Well, congratulations to the team. Well done. Well done. We'll move on to some of the meat and potatoes now of what we're doing today. Item 11, review the audit and the annual comprehensive financial report.
Yes, and we have auditors presenting this item today, and I believe we have Nielsen on a call, and she has a presentation.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Do we have the slides or do I need to share?
We're bringing it up now.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. As mentioned, my name is Nelsina Shirk. I am the senior manager on the district's financial statements for fiscal year 2024. You should have received the financial statements, report on internal control, and the audit communication letter in your packet. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the scope of the audit, very high level, we are auditing the financial statements over the fiscal year June 30th, 2024. So that encompasses July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. Next slide, please. Oh, I think one more back. For the scope of the engagement, if we could go back. Yes, thank you. So this slide lays out the process, which is a pretty lengthy process. It goes from June 2024 is when we started with our interim through now as we're presenting to the board. So in June, we do our interim field work. This is where we are examining the processes within the district. So we're looking at processes for cash receipts, cash disbursements. In essence, we're looking to make sure that there are checks and balances in place within the district, and then provide any recommendations where we see fit to make sure that everything's following along within the policies and procedures of the district. We also do our risk assessment during this summer timeframe, which consists of our planning and, again, ensuring that there are checks and balances within the district. We move to our field work where we are testing specific material account balances. We are looking, some of those procedures would be confirming cash, testing bank reconciliations, testing a sample of capital asset activity. And what we're looking for is to make sure what we would expect to see is what is actually occurring. We also look at the revenue and expenses to see if they are occurring in the correct period. So for fiscal year 2024. Next slide, please. So we have issued an unmodified auditor's opinion on the financial statements. This is considered a clean opinion. We had no findings in non-compliance with laws, regulations, grant agreements, or so forth. There were no significant deficiencies identified either. However, we did identify one material weakness, which related to an error in the calculation of how depreciation was being calculated. That effect was for the current fiscal year 2024, but it also occurred all the way back to fiscal year 2020. This rose to the level of a material weakness due to the amount, the dollar amount was material, and the magnitude of the error occurring during the current fiscal year of audit, and then going back several years. Next slide, please.
Question?
Yep.
Can I ask a question, please, ma'am?
Absolutely.
Okay, was the depreciation problem on a single asset or was it on a collection of assets?
So it was on a collection of assets.
Okay, what was the amount of the error, plus or minus? I mean, was it a positive? Did we make a mistake in over depreciating or under depreciating?
It was over depreciating. When we looked at it, it had doubled. When we looked and compared from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 24, it doubled in size. So I believe in fiscal year 23 it was about 3.4 million. And then when we looked in fiscal year 24, it was 6.8 million or around the 6 million. So it had doubled, and that is what drew us more closely to see what was going on.
Okay, so the financial statement that is currently being signed off by you folks as the auditor includes the correct depreciation for this year, but obviously we are unable to go back and correct prior years. Is that right?
No, so it includes the correction for fiscal year 2024, and it also includes a prior period adjustment to restate the errors that occurred in prior year.
Okay, so we basically
Correct.
accumulated all of the prior year errors and incorporated it into the current year depreciation. So we basically ate up the errors this year, and next year, will the depreciation amount go down as a result?
It won't necessarily go down. It just depends on what you're adding into your capital asset and
Right.
putting it into process. So I would anticipate it either to remain the same or maybe increase a little bit, but all the corrections have been made in the financial statements.
Okay, so if I understand depreciation schedules, we have a list of things that we are depreciating. Each thing has its own depreciation schedule, its own time factor, and its own cost of money, so to speak, what we depreciated at. So this year, we added some depreciation
Mhm.
and corrected the mistakes of the past. We absorbed them into this year's depreciation. Would it not be logical that if we did that, then next year's depreciation would go down because we don't have to absorb the errors again from the prior year? Am I got my math wrong?
So and are you talking about accumulated depreciation or depreciation expense? Because accumulated depreciation, we went back and that was all corrected, and because it was being overstated.
Got it.
So that now should be correct.
I see.
Depreciation expense.
Accumulated depreciation, you're right. Okay, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
Yep.
I had the impression it was a summation of multiple things, and then we would not be having that summation of things in the future. But when you talk about accumulated,
Mhm.
I get it. So my bad. Okay.
And then going forward, that schedule has been corrected. So in the next fiscal year, as long as no one changes the spreadsheet, it should be appropriate going forward.
Can I add something?
Sure.
The reason that this miscalculated error happened is that we didn't have assets imported into our ERP system. So it was all done in Excel, and Excel formula error happened because of the manual entry. And my plan, and for going forward, I'm going to make sure to put all the assets into our ERP system. And then we'll list each asset life, and the value of the asset, and the system will be calculating depreciation automatically. And in that case, you won't have any errors or issues going forward, and calculation
Yeah.
should be easy.
Right. So kind of two steps to correct, right? We've got the spreadsheet corrected that went back, this is 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. And so that's now been corrected. That fixed all this year. Going forward, we're actually going to take another step forward and go, hey, we need to get all these assets in the system and have that automatically calculate that
So
depreciation.
we're correcting not only the result, but the process, right?
Correct.
All right, I got you. Thank you.
So the gross asset number changes and the gross depreciation number change.
Correct.
Yes.
essentially with this change.
No real dollars, but
Yeah.
but how we're accounting for everything, correct?
Okay, please continue.
Okay. I think we could go to the next slide. So we don't have any going concern doubts as of 6/30/2024. Management was really easy to work with. They're dedicated to what they do. No difficulties encountered, no issues getting the information. Any estimates were reasonable based on the information we provided. I would like to thank Mary for all of her hard work getting us all the information and working with us through this entire process. It's a lot of information that um, she's having to provide, or anybody in this position. So we greatly appreciate all of her hard work and dedication to get us to this point.
As do we.
Agreed.
As
Thank
do
you,
we.
Mary. Thank you.
Mary.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your help, not just in that, but in many other things here. So thank you. Any questions?
That's a very positive slide.
Yes. I have a question. Do you have a question, Pete?
No.
Got anything? Patty? Bill? I
Love a
do.
Clean financial.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I just need something explained to me so that I have a better understanding, because I am not an accountant and I'm not a CPA. I keep reading in here that our financial condition has improved in some measure because we have added to our assets some substantial large items. The thoroughbred lift station and also some addition from the pump stations. So the question that I had is, and my prior experience with capitalizing assets is that we can't typically capitalize an asset until in the world that I lived in a government world, you could not capitalize an asset until you actually accepted it and put it into operation. So if we are looking at the fiscal year ending on July 30th, were the 4 pump stations actually completely 3 pump stations,
Well,
were
plus
they
the lift station,
completely
yeah.
capitalized and put into the system, or did we capitalize a portion of them? And similarly with the thoroughbred lift station? Because I have not had an experience where you could capitalize a portion of an incompleted asset.
You can get that. So when you're building an asset, essentially you have your cost sitting in CIP, which is an asset on your balance sheet. So you still have all the invoices that you're paying to all the vendors that are working on building something, and it's all be going to CIP, and labor spent on working on the building a lift station, it's all going to CIP, and it's already should be sitting in the asset on the balance sheet. And then once it's complete and start being used and engineering and everybody sign off on it, that's when you move it out of CIP and place it as an asset, and you start depreciating it from that day. So that's when it just moves. But essentially, you always have it in as an asset on your books and the balance sheet.
Really?
Yes, it should not be an operating expense. It once you're working on something that's capitalizable.
Understand. I
should be-
guess
Mary, maybe
Curious.
you could
I guess-
comment on this too. Did we add those that the
Capital assets increased by a certain amount? That includes what we call, you're calling it CIP, but I know you use that as also capital. It's called work in progress. So everything that was spent during FY 24 on capital projects, we move all those expenses that you're in up into work in progress to show it as an asset, because it is. You know, we're creating things during the year, so it's not moved into buildings and equipment categories, but it sits in one line item called construction in progress. So this is all just a work in progress. So the amounts that we spent during FY 24, what we were discussing today about the addition of capital assets, they're not actually capitalized yet, but they are in progress. So they are an asset, just not depreciated. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that explanation. In my prior incarnations, we would not have put that on. That work in progress would have sat kind of in limbo until we were able. It's kind of like you can't recognize revenue until you realize revenue. And it was kind of the same theory. And Pete, you've been around. I mean, does this all make sense to you?
Not the way you're doing it, the way she's talking about it, yes. The way you're talking about it, you've got an asset, it's not on the books and your balance sheet is wrong.
Okay.
It's got to go somewhere, right? If you spend it, it went somewhere.
This is GAAP standard
Okay.
Government accounting standards. right?
and governmental accounting
Yeah,
standards.
it's different than private.
Yeah. Well, that experience was good. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Anything else?
I assume just by the by that if you're taking down loans during that same period to pay for it, and some of the cash is sitting there, you're accounting for that at the same time. It's an addition to cash, not necessarily a cash asset. How do you do that?
Oh, the cash flow is
The
separate.
cash flow is separate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're accounting for it separately.
But that has an impact on these financials too.
So this is an action item. We're asking for the committee recommendation for the board of directors to accept the audit.
Is there any further discussion here? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I recommend that we approve what they have done
Okay. All right.
and the way they have done it.
I second.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Pete. I've been properly schooled. I appreciate that.
Hmm.
Okay, so we have a motion to recommend that the board accept this audit as recommended. Is there a second?
I second.
Patty seconds. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Unanimously approved. Excellent. Okay.
Excellent job. Bob.
Yes, great job. Great job.
Mary, thank you.
Next year, we're hoping that maybe we'll get this done a little sooner too, right? That's the plan. Get it done a little sooner. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Next on the agenda, review of fiscal year 25-26 water sales predictions.
Yeah, this
Projections.
is really one of the first steps. We reviewed the CIP with the Engineering and Operation Committee last week. And with this committee, we wanted to review the fiscal year 25-26, so the upcoming fiscal year water sales projections. And so what you have before you is it's a brief discussion on kind of where we sit today as far as water sales, imported water purchases. If in the staff report looks back 7 years or so at the various trends and the rolling averages to kind of get a feel for to where we sit. The last year was obviously a very wet year. Ended the year with about 10,000 acre feet of sales. This year has been drier up until recently, and we have seen a rebound in import water purchases and sales related to that. So currently, the projection for this fiscal year that we're currently in, we're looking somewhere in the 11,000, high 11,000s. It looks like in water sales. So really, we were trying to take all this information into account, kind of where we look, even 4 or 5 years ago, kind of what we saw and the trends throughout the various months and what was the weather and those kind of things. So we look back, but all kind of moving averages and everything kind of pointed us to right about 11,000 acre feet as a spot where kind of an average year, not so dry, not so wet, and that's typically where we'd like to be. We'd like to be as close as right to possible, because then your revenues and expenses kind of match, match on either side. And, you don't go too conservative, because that puts pressure on rates, to be quite honest. And obviously we could have downside, obviously impacts net revenues as well. So trying to find that sweet spot, I think this year kind of showed us that, there was a rebound from actually 2 very wet years that we had in a row, but especially last year. It was already wet, and then we had a cool summer, and then it was very wet again. So that's what we're looking at this year, trying to strike that good balance. The other thing we always look at is, is there any risk of drought conditions, things that might put external forces on those water purchases, water sales, if there's mandates from the state or from wholesalers on, any cutbacks. That certainly does not look to be the case in this coming year. Again, we've been talking about this, but Met has record amounts of storage. Diamond Valley Lake, which we're going to take a tour of in June, is absolutely full. And many of the reservoirs all across the state are well above average, and again, I think they're just leaving room in there for the snow melt, to be quite honest. But you've got Oroville and all the big state reservoirs that have a robust amount of supply. So that, coupled with kind of where we're at, we've up north, we've had pretty decent weather. They've got a decent snowpack. They're already about 80% of the April 1st average. We're about to get multiple feet of snow up in the Sierras this week. Potentially more next week. And so it's looking like we're going to hit something about average. And so with that, and with the current levels of storage, I think in the next year, we can safely say there is going to be no allocations or cutbacks that are going to be pushed by bar some kind of emergency situation. But as far as the water supply itself, Met has a lot of storage. On the Colorado side, that still needs work, but they're having an okay winter. They're about to get some more too, and it looks like that that's trending towards kind of another average year. They could use some big years on that side to kind of get those large reservoirs that take longer to fill on that side. They could use a few more good years on that side. But as far as just our import supplies, everything looks pretty good. So really no impact to this sales projection from those pressures. So that's what staff is recommending. It's actually a 10%. We saw the 10,000 acre feet last year. This year we budgeted for 10,000 acre feet again. Looks like we're going to exceed that. So we're trying to kind of, again, strike that balance. It's sometimes hard to figure out exactly where you're at, but I think this is our best educated guess for the upcoming year that kind of balances all those things. And so with that, I'll take any questions. And I think we had a speaker on this item.
Yes, we do. And we'll go ahead and take the request for a public comment. That'd be Dwayne.
It's okay. Just water.
I'm going to try it. Orkut.
Pretty close. And Scotland Network.
Okay.
Before I start my formal comment, Constantine, can you do me a favor? Because I think it will help explain things in the future. Your predecessor had a series of graphs that he was able to put up on the screen that showed the ag water sales. He also showed with the increase in residential units that have connected into the district, the minimal amount of increased water sales that produced, because I want to make sure that we have an understanding here that just adding more residential units is going to alleviate the global issue facing this district in terms of regaining the amount of sales, and hoping being able to spread fixed costs, which you would understand as an accountant.
That's right.
Over many units to help lower water costs, embedded costs.
Yes.
With that, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I've mentioned before, trying not to beat a dead horse and so forth, it would be helpful. Again, I appreciate finance on the subcommittee, but I would like to see a farmer or somebody in agriculture on the subcommittee. It used to be these groups were exclusively farmers, because I don't think you can necessarily communicate all that what I'm saying to someone that's a non-farmer, okay? Because I get concerned that the members here and others drive by declining orchards, stressed out, or dead orchards, or bare unirrigated land and think there's not a problem in this district. I provide specific evidence of the amount of acreage documented by third-party sources that have gone out of production. I met with your general manager and showed him aerial pictures of 40-year-old groves that have been the last year taken out of production. And when I look back, which I will go through now with my specific questions, I can see the disconnect based on the prior rate studies that Rainbow has had and the assumptions in those studies, and the fact that nothing was taken into consideration on the impact to agriculture. So if I can ask a few questions, which I think will hopefully be educational. I assume that, let me ask, does the board know how many residential meters are in this district approximately? No. I'm asking for people that are actually decision makers here.
No.
Do you? Okay, that's fine. I'm not criticizing. Okay, I'm just asking. Do you know how many ag meters there are? Okay. You've got approximately a little
Yes,
over
we do. Actually,
6,000.
we do know, Blaine, we do know some things.
Okay.
I believe of the approximately 8,800 or so meters in the district, approximately 70% of them are residential, and those residential customers account for about 25 to 35% of our sales of water, and the remaining meters, which would be about 60 or 65%, something like that, of and the ag meters would be about 30% of our total meters, and they supply approximately 2/3, 65, 67% of our sales. I think that's
Close. He's close.
Actually,
Am I close?
Actually, that's a pretty good segue into my next comments. Round numbers, you've got a little over 6,000 residential meters, according to your recent study, and about 2,000 ag meters, okay? It's an inverse relationship between water sales and the number of meters. So then my question is, why are the large meters that use more water, of which you need to sell more of, why were they increased? Why did you increase the fixed monthly meter costs? That's illogical to me. If you've got a larger meter, presumably that's because you need more volume. You're going to buy more water. And yet this district has disproportionately increased the cost of fixed water costs. Now, let's take a comparison. In FPUD, which is in the same detachment with Rainbow, and I'm using a 2-inch meter because that's the size I've got, the monthly fixed charge, which I still think is too high, is roughly about $400. Valley Center, which is still in the Water Authority, fixed meter charge for a 2-inch meter is $212. Eastern fixed meter charge is $35 that you've just joined. So tell me why for a 2-inch meter, I'm paying $760 a month.
You have brought this up before, and I would like to know why too.
Thank you. Because it all has a bearing on what I think is the disconnect. In addition to which, just as an example, showing the disconnect between residential, and if you were needing to raise rates, you can incrementally raise rates on 6,000 meters a lot easier than you can on 2,000 meters. And that's presuming that those residential users were actually bringing a business and creating economics, into the district. So explain also, if you would, why a 2-inch residential meter is being charged 60% less on average, approximately, than my 2-inch agricultural meter. Okay, all in the studies you can take a look at. I can't explain it. All I can tell you is that whoever prepared that report didn't take into any consideration the impact on agriculture. Then, if you would, explain to me why in Eastern Eastern has a per unit water cost of approximately 400, based on 2025, $404.17 per unit. Rainbow has a cost of over almost $5 a unit. Okay. So agriculture is getting 490.
491.
Okay.
Yeah.
Close enough to fag. I was rounding, sorry. So ag is getting hammered on fixed costs. Ag is getting hammered on per unit cost, and you're losing farms. Okay. That doesn't make any sense. And the reason you're losing farms, I don't want to hear about imports. I don't want to hear about tariffs. All of that is a deflection. Okay. That doesn't explain what is being addressed by farmers. We have other farmers here. Okay. I brought them because I wanted to make sure you weren't thinking that I'm just making this stuff up and the like. And what I don't see from the board and all is fixes. We need to lower the fixed charges significantly. I'd love to see them synonymous with what Eastern has. And we should, because most of us that worked on the LAFCO detachment expected that we were going to get water relief in January of 2024, not a year later, and still have no relief. And so my concern is you keep kicking this can down the road, you're going to have more farms going out of production, affecting your water sales. And what about community character? Okay. What about environmental issues? You think trees don't absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen? I mean, there's just no rationale. I'm prejudiced as a second generation farmer for, on this issue, but I have a sense from just the body language. And please, I don't mean to insult anyone, that people drive by these dead orchards to the store and they pick up a green piece of fruit or a yellow piece of fruit or an orange piece of fruit, and they think there's no problem. Okay. If you have any evidence, in summary, of any trade legislation or any bilateral guarantee that foreign producers will absolutely unconditionally provide food into the US of A, please provide it, because I'm not aware of it. And if you keep driving agriculture out of the US, I'm afraid that our families, our kids, and our grandkids are going to pay an unprecedented price. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. And I just have a brief comment on what you have to say, and I appreciate very much you very eloquently pressed your point very eloquently, and I appreciate that. My recollection, and once again, I could be wrong, and Jake, Constantine, you are new, so you might not really have this. My recollection, when you asked the question, why are the fixed charges so high? Right? On the larger meters, right. My recollection is the way that went is that there was a certain amount of money that had to be recovered through fixed charges. You spread that across all of the meters, and my recollection is that the fixed charges were that because ag used the substantial volume of water compared to residential, that ag should carry a larger percentage of the fixed cost than the residential users. I'm not defending it. I'm just trying to tell you this is the way that I recall the discussion went. And because we use meter size as the benchmark for how fees are charged, it worked out that the policymakers concluded that I'm going to make up a number. This is not a this is an exemplary number, that if ag used 70% of the water, then ag needed to carry 70% of the fixed costs. And so then there's this elaborate process of dividing the fixed costs between the smaller meters to the next size, to the next size, and the next size. And I'm not going to get into that. I don't remember what the gymnastics were for that. But my recollection is that in general, that is how the decision came to be. Now, Jake, am I off?
Well, I want point of clarification because I went through a lot of the cost of service study happened before I was here, but I reviewed it when I was coming on board. It was, yeah, obviously set rates and things for the next several years. And so while you're not wrong, the fixed charges are apportioned by meter size, and that's both on the residential and on the ag side, depending on the size of the meter. As you know, that does deliver X amount of capacity. So that's the rationale behind it. But there was, and if you go back to those presentations, and I know this is something that's been discussed here, there was a look at alternatives, and one of the alternatives being, hey, what if sales go to, I think it was down to 6,000 acre feet or something. It was something very low, but basically where, you know, the water sales plummet. And the part of the idea was, and it wasn't a pretty, you know, it wasn't a pretty story. This is, you know, nobody thinks that. I think the direct goal was to, you know, because there is a pretty large spread between the variable cost, right? The 491 versus, you know, I think it's 623 on the residential side, the dollar per unit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was intentional as the higher fixed cost to reduce that variable rate in an attempt to assist the high water user to get the lower variable rate. That was part of the discussion. If you go back to the budget and finance meetings, if you go back to those alternatives were looked at. What if we end up here? What if we end up there? What does that look like on both residential? I mean, it analyzed against all of our customer classes, those different rates. And I think that's where the board finally came to the, you know, trying to strike a balance, because I'll just tell you, you know, a lot of our residential customers, they don't like the fixed costs either. They think the fixed cost on the residential customers is too high. We don't use much water, and the fixed cost is high. Patty, you probably vouch for that, right?
They say
so. There's a similar thing going on there, and there was an attempt to try to strike balance to provide, again, people are using high water with a lower variable rate to save you overall. It varies by property to property, right? Depending on how big your meter is, how much water you use. And we do have people that actually shift between class sometimes because, hey, I'm using less water. I'm better off getting the lower fixed costs and the higher variable rate versus, I'm sure in your case, you have a fully planted grove. It's more economical to do the higher fixed costs and the lower variable rate as opposed to the other. I understand you don't like any of them. I understand. We hear you, but I think that was the rationale. And here's the thing, we're going through this again. So that's what I mean. Your comments are not falling on deaf ears,
right.
But we are going to go through, because this does require us to go through the budget as a whole. It absolutely requires that. We are heavily regulated. And that is true. Doesn't mean, you know, we're not looking at creative solutions and things like that. But, and so I'll just say that we hear you, and we're continuing to kind of go through these things. So appreciate it.
Hopefully quick follow-up comment. Both of you are right on the money. Thank you, Flint. And Jake, both of you. Yes, there was a differential. You are correct that the larger meters, which are predominantly agriculture, took the brunt of the fixed cost. Okay. Having said that, my fixed cost 4 years ago, maybe predating everyone here, was something in the order of $270. My fixed charge over tripled. Okay. And if you look at the assumption that was used in these reports, it basically, the rationale and so forth, that was the overriding rationale, and I try and find it and quote it, of course I've got so much paperwork here. It basically said, words to the effect, if I can paraphrase, that we are assuming that the area is transitioning out of agriculture. Well, with your costs that you have embedded now, I guarantee you you're transitioning out of agriculture. I may not be able to do a lot of things well, but as a second generation farmer, I can tell you I can farm well. And if I can't make it, nobody's going to be able to make it. Mr. Scarsdad here is drilling a well out of desperation. Okay. I don't know that he is convinced 100% that that's going to be able to keep his grove in production, but he's looking at what you've got on the table here, and he's concerned he's guaranteed of being put out of business in a last death attempt to try and save his farm. And apparently no one, I shouldn't say no one, that's a little bit harsh, is aware that we're at the nth level here. We don't have any more rope to help keep us from this issue. It has to be addressed. And I can relatively assure you, even as a residential user, if my costs go up $1 or $2 or $5 or whatever as a residential user, I'm not going to lose my home. Okay. But you are putting farms that you already see out of business, and you're going to put the last Mohicans out of business if this district doesn't take serious action. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
And I believe we were looking for a recommendation on this item.
Yes, thank you, Jake. Staff recommends the Board of Directors accept 11,000 acre feet as the water sales projection for FY 25-26 for incorporation into the budget process. And so is there a motion from any member of the committee to
I would so move.
what?
I would so move.
Okay, Bill moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Patty seconds. Any discussion of the motion?
I just have a comment or two.
Yeah.
You know, this is just what we used to call an EWAG. That's an educated wild ass guess. And it is just that. I mean, the best minds in water can sit down and make their best efforts to understand everything that goes into the climate and its change, the flagging or staying basically at the same rate or increasing of agricultural use, the residential increase and decrease. The one comment I would make about budgeting and EWAGs is that the business I was in was managing associations, homeowners associations, if you would call it. I managed big ones, 6,300 units, 4,800 units, that sort of thing.
No wonder your hair is receding.
Hey, it's gone. It's just almost gone. I wear a hat, but you know, most of the time. No, the interesting part is there are 50,000 of them in California. Any idea? Did you have any idea there's 50,000 associations in California? And there's over 500,000 of them nationally. What is the number one problem that all of them have? And that is the economics of an association work just fine to keep assessment rates nice and level, even in the face of some inflation, just so long as we ignore CIP. We just ignore it. We ignore it for decades. We ignore it for 30 years. All of a sudden, everybody wakes up one day and everything's breaking down. And the irrigation system doesn't work anymore. The streets are going to gravel and all of the other infrastructure is going to hell. And there is absolutely no money to take care of that because we didn't fund reserves for the last 30 years. And every director was a hero. So, you know, and some of that happened here, not some of it, a lot of it. Because when I came onto the board in 2015 as a neophyte, I sat down and took a look at what our overall, you know, miles of mainline were and how many pump stations we had. And all of the infrastructure and what was in the bank. And the simple of it was about 10% of what was needed that should have been there by that time in order to start the wholesale replacement that has gone on now in the last 8 or 9 years. Just plain fact. So were we able to do that? Well, eventually we had to borrow a whole bunch of money to do it. And that's what associations all over the country have to do. So, you know, part of what is happening to you and to me, and I will say it happening to me too, and I got the tiniest yard you ever saw, is that we're playing catch up. And we're in a big time catch up situation right now, trying to fund the future replacement, as well as pay down now all the mortgages that we've created to you know, both to escape terrible water rates, et cetera. So when I sit down and start talking about the budget this year, I'm going to look globally. What's catch up? What is the amount that we put aside, you know, to make sure that that doesn't happen again 20 years from now, as well as how much we're paying for the water that's coming in the door. I will tell you that our water bill here at when I moved in 11 years ago was $50 on my 3/4 inch meter. And now it's 190. You know, just as a little tiny residential customer, I got a lawn. It's 10 by 16 feet. I got 100 square feet of lawn, and then everything else is on drip system, and it's just planters. That's it. I use 3 to 5 units, depending on the time of the year. 3 to 5 units, you know.
It's $30.
Yeah. So if you take a look at that, you know, fixed costs are more than I'm paying for the water too. And so what we have to do, I think, is really a whole lot of planning that not only looks at where we have to look, first of all, where we are today in terms of the history, where we got here, what we have to deal with right now. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I got on this board to try to preserve what I considered to be one of the real jewels of Southern California, which is Fallbrook. And it's a jewel because of the 2/3 of our meter, of our volume that is sold to agriculture, because agriculture is our business. I wasn't concerned about my situation because I wasn't going to go out of business if the water rates went up. I was concerned about, you know, maintaining agriculture here, the nurseries, the growers, the orchards and the vineyards. And I think everybody is, I really do. So I'm anxious to have you become really a great deal a part of this process when we sit down and tear all this apart, so nothing happens that isn't totally transparent, and then sit down and analyze that against the state requirements that we have, which are burdensome as heck. And don't allow us to do what we used to do, basically, which is just load the residential customer with more and ag customer with less. You know, state law says we can't do that anymore, and see if there's another way. And if you've got a suggestion, I want to hear it. And so does our committee. And so that's my thought.
Thank you. Very good comments and very right on the money. I think we can get there. We have to do adjustments, okay? Performance. This is the roll-up part of this process. What my fellow farmers are concerned about is being able to stay around while we're rolling up our sleeves to get into exactly what you said needs to be done. I don't know that it's unachievable getting that balance. We used to have that balance in this district, okay, where farmers could actually farm and look like they had a future, all right? We need to get into the details now because literally my fellow farmers I know are having conversations all the time that you may not be privy to. Do I keep the water on for another month? Okay, is there any hope for me? Okay, we have to give them hope. and getting down into the weeds, the details that you just outlined so well is exactly what needs to be done as soon as humanly possible. And I'll be happy to volunteer to share my time. How about in any way, shape, or form? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 13, review of the monthly finance packet.
Before you go on, could I make a comment?
Absolutely, Pete.
In making these estimates, I would be interested in knowing what you're assuming the volume will be from the farmers and how that compares with the previous year.
Yeah, we, I mean, really, Flint was about right on the money, as far as the, sales go. It was, we're actually, depending on, you know, a lot of it's dependent on weather, to be quite honest, but it is 55 to 65%. And so we did kind of err on the lower side of that. We are seeing some growth on the residential side, so that takes into account, but it is true that it's very small, especially the houses that are being built today. You drive over there, it's turf in the front yards and, you know, mandated drip systems and things like that. So it is small. So that is the assumption. We will have some meter growth, but ag falls in about that 55% range of the sales. So try to err somewhat on the low side, but more of like an average weather year. That's where we think we're going to be.
Because I would be interested in knowing if instead of using the total that you're using for your next year, if you reduce that to the volume that you had this year, what impact would that have on other aspects of what's going on for the year?
Yeah, well, it does put pressure on rate. The lower the projection, it does put pressure on rates. So that's why we want to try to be as close to right as possible. We're actually raising it 10% from where we were last year because I think that is closer to reality. We weren't, you know, after a couple of wet years and not sure what was happening out there, you know, not really sure what's happening out there. I think we budgeted very conservatively last year, but I think we've seen a little bit of a rebound. And I think we can adequately say, I mean, you could have another really wet year and we could be below and it would hit us a little bit, but that's what I mean. You've got to kind of balance the risk versus, you know, and that's why I like to do it outside of the actual, you know, before we actually plug in all the budget numbers. This is where water districts and their customers get into trouble, right? All our friends to the south, right? Where you bring in and then you start to adjust your sales volume based on where you want to be with the dollars. And so we're trying to kind of remove that and say, where are we really, right? Where do we really think we are? And I think this is really where we are now. A year from now, that could change, right? We've seen that, but I think our best, you know, our best indication is here. And we've had a lot of things that have kind of weighed in on these decisions, right? You know, and I know it's not all across our district, but the popularity of that crop swap program, we've got, you know, we have a lot of ag customers that are reinvesting. We do have a lot that are reinvesting. So I think there is some hope out there. You know, free money doesn't hurt to drive some hope, but I think some of those things, like we're seeing a lot of activity down on mostly in Division I, where we're seeing, you know, a lot of those projects are actually replanting avocado rootstock, and so they're just kind of going back in with new growth. That could depress actually sales in some of those for a little while, right? You're going to use less water. So I think it's really a combination of those factors where, you know, we think this is really more typical of what our average weather year is likely to bring. And so, you know, if it's a little up, it's a little down, then, you know, there's adjustments, you know, revenue and expenses, but it does try to factor those things in. And we assumed, yeah, somewhere in the 55-60% of the sales would go to our ag, those 2,400 meters.
Yeah.
And Pete,
Coming up here because I know Therese would be upset with me if she's not recording, but the quietest member of your board historically probably has made the most astute observation today. Namely, you've got 2 water sales of agriculture to 1 residential sale in terms of volume. If agriculture goes out, the projections continue to decline. By default, your residential rates are going to go up. We need to have a conversation, an honest conversation with the residents and the farmers of this district. So thank you, Pete.
Pete, I appreciate what you said very much, and you are the longest serving member of this committee. So you've been here the longest, you've heard the most, and I'm sure you are aware more so than the rest of us that in addition to everything else that we have heard, that our challenge is exacerbated by two things. Number one, the exceptionally small number of meters that we have in this district. And secondly, the fact that our district is by no means homogeneous, like a lot of other districts, which are fundamentally residential or some others that are fundamentally rural and therefore aggish. But we have this odd split between the two. And, I think in many cases we are faced with Solomon's baby. And what do we do? How do we, and you've seen that more so than the rest of us. You've been here the longest. So thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 14. No, we have to do the monthly finance packet. I'm sorry, I didn't do that. Constantine, traditionally at our committee, the finance manager kind of gives us the executive summary or overview on the finance packet. Okay, so do you want to do that today?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
please do.
All right. And I wanted to first start with a review of our water sales. And this actually is some good news that January was pretty good. And from overall June, from July to January, right now we are at 9,068 acre feet of water sales compared to budgeted 10,000. So it shows that this year we're going to be way above our budgeted numbers of what we were originally planning. So that's our good news. And when we're looking at the financials, as of January, we want to be at around 58% for revenues and expenses. And you see that revenues at 74%. So we're at 34.7 million, which is 9% over the budget. And it has to do with increased water sales. So we increase expenses as well by 6% over the budget. And it has to do with increased water purchases. So our net operating revenue as of January 31st is 9.2 million. We also have non-operating revenues, which increased, and it's coming from interest that we're earning from our savings account. And I was taking a look at our reserve balance, and as you can see, we had a lowest point and a dip in November, and it was right before the separation from San Diego. And as you can see, we're starting to rebuild those reserves. We're at the minimum target right now, and as of January, we're at 12.9 million. And I believe that we will be able to rebuild our reserves, and the policy is to rebuild under 10 years. And I think we can do that sooner than that. And it's a little bit dangerous for the district to be low in reserves because it would cause us to borrow more. And then borrowing right now, interest rates are very high. So, and what helped us in January, we made a payment for separating from San Diego, which is the total payment was 15.7 million, and we already prepaid 3 million for that, and we borrowed the whole 15.7 million. So the net 3 million, we put it in our unreserved funds, and it's invested in a camp at 4.55%. So that is helping us to rebuild our reserves. And on this exit fee, we don't have to make any payments on the interest and principal until January 1st. So we have this period where we can free up the cash flow and earn interest, and it will help us to rebuild the reserves as well.
Great.
So overall, looking good. And auditor said we don't have a going concern, so we're not going to be filing for bankruptcy, anything like that. And and that is great. And overall, on the customer service call volume, we had 922 calls as of February, which is about normal. We don't have any major complaints from customers, and compared to a spike of calls in October, if you see, and I think they had an issue with the billing. And overall, and I think that would be all for review of the monthly financials.
Yeah, so we
If
are
you have any
ahead,
questions?
we are ahead of, well, if you think back, we were doing those financial projections, those 5-year looks, well, about this time a year ago. And it actually mirrors really exactly what we've seen. The low point was in November, and we started to recover from there. A couple of things I think are really pushing pushing us in a faster recovery mode than we anticipated. One is it was detaching early. Finishing in November, we budgeted for January. There was real savings there that it's hitting our balance sheet here. Obviously the $3 million we refunded ourselves from the initial exit fee payment, so that's a huge part of what that is. And then the increased sales is having a positive net revenue impact. So far so good. It's raining a lot, so our sales probably aren't real high right now. But I do expect that, I think we had anticipated we were going to be in the $11.5 million range in unrestricted reserves by the end of this fiscal year, and I think we're trending well above that, which is good. It really gives us more flexibility as we go into the next budget season, which is really what we were shooting for. So anyway, so far a lot of good news this fiscal year. So.
Any comments, Pete? Patty?
No, he just needs to keep looking at that crystal ball. 'Cause right now we're doing good.
Bill, you got anything?
Kind of break finally. Been
Been
several
a bit.
years where we haven't.
Hmm.
And so it's pretty nice that we're going to end up with a surplus this year. Significant surplus. And we did have the lowest reserves. It was kind of like this, when we looked at the end of this year originally and said, where are we going to be? And we were, flat out broke, not broke, but the lower than acceptable amount of reserves is the way we characterized it. And it's nice to hear that we may be more toward the acceptable reserves.
Yeah. And we have executed about 70% of our CIP too for this year. So that's the idea, to keep doing that.
Yes.
Year after year. That's the plan.
It's great.
Again, not being an accountant, I need some schooling. Can you help me? Okay. When I look at these reports, which I think I understand, what I see is water and wastewater net revenue is a large negative number. I'm having a hard time. I see this and I recognize this graph here about tracking the reserve levels and the fact that our reserve levels are improving. I'm having a hard time connecting reserve levels to our financial reports and our cash flow reports, because if we are losing money, which I think is what the negative $14 million is, how can our reserves be going up? Is there any way that I can look at these and see how the reserves are going up?
And
Help me.
yes, thank you for that question. And these reports were prepared previously and by previous administration, and I didn't change anything as of yet. I just started 2 weeks ago and wanted to ask Finance Committee if you would like to change the way we're presenting the reports that would follow GAAP, because currently some stuff that is being recorded in revenues are not actually revenues, and that is why you're seeing large negative amounts right here. So, like for example, we recorded non-operating expenses of 22.3 million,
Right.
and that is not an expense
I'm
because
assuming that's the loans, right?
The detachment
That's
payment.
those, and oh, the
The
detachment
payment,
this
payment,
is
15.7 million.
this is the exit fee that we paid in January.
right?
And actually, auditors were recommending to make it an intangible asset and depreciate it over the life of, well, it will be amortized since it's a non-tangible asset.
Over the life of the
Over the
loan.
life of 10 years. No, actually, the way you consider things to be non-tangible asset is what is the benefit that you will be getting, and our ratepayer, it was a study done, our ratepayers will be benefiting from separating from San Diego for the next 10 years at least. So it will be amortized over the 10 years. So I will be moving this out of non-operating expenses and making it an non-tangible asset. So
And so basically we would be accruing, we would apply accrual to
we'll
the
be
payment, right?
we'll be amortizing it. Yes, yes.
Yep, okay.
And
All right.
then the same thing on the, if you see on the wastewater expenses, we did receive a large bill from Oceanside
Mhm.
for wastewater treatment that was not previously recorded. And that's incorrect. We should not be waiting to pay the bill to record it. It doesn't matter when we pay it. If the service has been done and completed, we should have recorded it as an expense earlier and then
Okay.
to see it coming. So currently right now, it seems like we're a little bit on a cash basis, but we should be on a full accrual basis because water is enterprise fund in the governmental financials, and we're on a full accrual basis. That should be. So
So you've got some thoughts in mind, Constantine, that would revise these reports, these regular monthly reports, so that when we say our reserves are going up, we'll be able to get a sense of that by looking at the report and finding positive
yes.
balances rather than negative
And
balances.
they will be matching also to annual comprehensive financial report that we file with auditors. Right now, this is not matching because this is not GAAP. This is just how it's been presented to the finance committee. And some of the things here, they're not supposed to be in revenues.
I don't know about Pete, but I'd appreciate GAAP reporting. How about you, Pete?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Did you get any comments from the auditors about these differences?
No, because this is for presentation purposes only, and that's how it's been presented to the finance committee. But on annual comprehensive financial report, the official report that we file with the GFOA, it is presented properly how it's supposed to be. So that is why right now this reports that we look at monthly, they do not match to the ACFR. So, and I want to make sure that we're seeing the correct gap and following the standards.
See why I like this guy?
Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Good
Okay,
question, Flint.
any other comments on the financials? All right. Suggested agenda items for the next meeting. Obviously, we'll be talking about budget.
Yeah.
Budget
Operating budget. Yep.
Yes.
and
Does that incorporate the farmers' big concerns here? Like, I personally feel like their meter charges should be, the fixed charges should be standardized throughout this area. Like, why Valley Center is paying so much less than our people?
Yeah.
I don't like.
Well, it does boil down to be honest with you, when that discussion is really going to occur is when we get into the looking at the cost of service. That is why it differs. If you look at Valley Center's variable rate, you'll see their variable rate is much higher than ours. So it's this the balance of how we're allocating those charges, and that it was a board decision back in 23 to allocate those in that way. Certainly it can be, I mean, it can be looked at. There are different ways to.
Yeah, I think
kinda
there's a lot to look at here
Yeah.
because even they mentioned that Eastern's per unit charges are 417.
Eastern serves 1 million residential customers. We are never going to be, you cannot compare. You really can't compare us to them. That's what I mean. And they have local water sources. I mean, they're very different. I know, and not everybody understands
We're
that.
9% of that.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
All we're doing,
Yeah, but these farmers, I mean, I know two of them now. they thought they were going to, with this detachment, have a lower rate to pay, and they've not seen any of that.
Yeah. Well, we did lower the ag rate
So-
by 5%, but I understand that they
Yeah.
not enough is what they said.
We stopped the increase. It's 15% with San Diego if we would stay, and then that would just drive us out of the business
Yeah.
completely. You see
Yeah, it
on
would
the
have been much
numbers.
worse.
Yeah.
But I think there's room for that discussion.
Right.
What the process that we're looking at is, it's kind of, it's a step budget process, right? We did CIP, water sales projections. We're going to be looking at operating budget. So that's basically rainbow cost, right?
Mhm.
We'll be looking at that. All those things kind of put together are revenue need, right? So this is
Mhm.
our revenue need for the next coming fiscal year based on all those factors. And then what does that look like for our current rates? Like, do we, is there a need for 3%, 4%, whatever it is, right? The same kind of thing we do every year. The thing we have, and this is what I was trying to say earlier, was we have the opportunity, that we don't have to raise rates on July 1. We're not going to
Yeah,
raise rates on
that's what
July
you
1.
said.
Yeah. So
Holding you to it.
yeah, so we'll be looking at January 1 as the next adjustment. That's when Met's rates go up. So our purchase water costs will go up. We'll factor that into the overall budget. But it's not insignificant. It's not, crazy, but it's a decent amount. And as we go through from, basically from July to January, that's the area where you're actually looking at what does your rate sheet look like, right? You know what the revenue need is. What does that rate sheet look like? And so that's what we have IB kind of tasked with, and Constantine, obviously overseeing that is, here's our budget, here's the need, and then what does that look like on January 1? And that's where it, how much fixed charges go here, how much fixed charges go there. That's all part of that cost of service. And every district does that, right? And makes some decisions about how they want to allocate those costs. But they all have, there's a bucket that has to be filled, and it's how you fill that bucket, with the various revenue sources. So, but that will be something that the committee and board will get to weigh in on if there's a desire to look at various alternatives. I think we'll have the opportunity to do that and be prepared for whatever changes we need to make for January 1. I will say, we did a 5-year Prop 218 notice. This was in 23.
Yeah.
So you actually have rates all the way, you have those approvals all the way through 28. So if the board decides you do want to make a change in the cost of service, you're going to have to redo that 218 notice. So actually you'll have to have that done probably by October, because you have to mailings it to have to go to everyone, and public hearings and all these different things. You have a couple of years where within the existing rate structure, you could make some modification without having to do that, or you have to go back to the 218. So there's some decisions to make over those months, and they're not light decisions. I think, setting your rate structure has to be done in a very methodical, and you have to have a good basis for it, and regardless of how people feel, right? So yeah.
And I just remember back when I first joined this committee back in 2017, that the operating budget excluding water purchases for Rainbow was substantially lower than it is today. And then you can apply some inflation factors, but when you combine the fact that there was over a 3 or 4 year period preceding Jake's arrival, a noticeable increase in the budget of the district to operate, plus small number of meters to spread it over, and a very unhomogeneous community, it just presented the district, as I recall, with some really hard choices back then.
It still will be.
And still will be.
Yeah.
So all you can really do is start creating scenarios. Scenarios that use different assumptions.
Mhm.
And so, what I've done in the past for boards, trying to figure out assessment rates or variable assessment rates in some cases. is just that, we take a look at what we would need to know, for example, of the large meter, of our large meter customers, how many don't use any water to speak of, but they're paying the fixed rate.
Yeah.
Many of them use this much, how many of them use that much, in every classification. And then, in order to try to unscramble the question that he poses, our speaker poses, the more scenarios we can do that take a set of reasonable assumptions and say, okay, if we do this, this, and this, then this is the rate. If we do this, this, and this, then this is the rate.
Yeah.
All working off this 11,000 acre feet.
Right.
Because once that's adopted, what the board is about to do, now you can work backwards. And you can do all those scenarios with really no problem. Until you have that, you got nothing, because you don't know how much.
And you just,
so-
what we don't hear from in here, the farmers are very well organized, and God bless them for doing that. I mean, that's their livelihood, and they need to get organized to come in and make their case. What we don't hear from are the thousands of residential customers who are using $30 worth of water and paying $150, $120, $140 a month in a water bill.
Yeah. And our customer service they hear from.
I'm sure they do,
do.
but it does not come here, it does not come to this, and it
Right.
doesn't really come to the board
Right.
from what I've seen in the past.
Yeah.
The January water bill is
And-
$90.
That, so I just think that that's
Mm.
that's a side of the equation that we are not
That I-
hearing here today, is that if we were to drive those fixed costs up even higher on the residential customer, or the rate, the water rate.
Yeah.
Up on the residential customer, at some point, we probably would start to hear very similar protestations,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. And yeah. So we'll get into those conversations.
That's rates, that's.
There is some good things you're working with. The meter count is increasing, which helps, that having that larger denominator, it just helps to spread those costs.
But it's slow.
And we're buying cheaper water.
Yep.
There is
Right.
there is no
And
doubt
that's gonna
about
be
that.
great.
Yeah. So
Okay, so we have agenda items for next time, and unless somebody's got something really important, I think it's time for us to adjourn at 3:00. So adjournment, okay? All right.
Okay,
QED, let's quit and eat dinner.
sounds
Okay.
good.
Well, really, but
a little early.
I think